Hello, good evening to everyone. So I'm an ALT here in Kurume, Fukuoka Prefecture. So I'm teaching at senior high school. So I really don't have any experience with online teaching. So okay. Anyway, so I am sure that most of you are already seasoned teachers. So this presentation is more of like just a review for most of you. Now, before we start, I would want like, okay, I just want you to give your opinion about, oh no, just tell me if you agree um, by clicking the thumbs up button with the two statements that I'll be showing you. Okay, so just give me a thumbs up. How do I see the thumbs up? Jose.
They'll just show up.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so here is the first statement. So wait, I just have to get rid of this. Okay, the purpose of the English classroom is not only to teach language, writing, literature, but to promote learning in and through English. Do you agree? Okay.
Can you see all the thumbs up?
I'll be changing the.
You don't have to, just open the participants window.
Okay. Participants window. Yeah.
And probably because the thumbs up is a little bit transient, probably the raise hand button will stay longer until people actually bring their hands up.
So let's just have the raise hand button. So I could see a lot of thumbs up already. Thank you so much. So this means that most of you do agree with this fundamental bias, and that is to start with this presentation. Okay, let's go to the next statement. This is from Galle Galle. You cannot teach a man anything. You can only help him discover it within himself. So do you agree? Okay. Okay, thank you so much for the raised hand. So for those of you who agreed with the two statements, I believe that your way of teaching is gravitating towards learning-centered language teaching. So this way of teaching considers the beliefs about language and beliefs about learning. So a learning teaching paradigm shifts from what should be done in the course study to what's specifically done by language teachers in their classes. The focus is then on the shoulds of classroom practice. So in this paradigm, we consider, or the focus would be three things. First, view of language as form and function. Second, learning-based and thus process-oriented. And third, a comprehensive view of learning. So I'll be starting with the language teaching learning paradigm from Vilches, and she used this learning cake as an analogy. So this is an analogy that is meant to concretize the concept of the two levels of learning, which begins with the foundation or baseline and is topped up by developing other potentials. It is like what Krashen calls the I+1 or the comprehensible input, which states that language is best acquired when language input, such as listening or reading, is one level beyond his or her current level of competence. So there's like a gradual movement from foundation to potential. This learning cake model is also similar to some other perspectives of human learning. So this time, I would like you to write in the chat box your understanding of other analogies from different perspectives. So this is the first one. This is the perspective of Piaget. basing on the words that you can see on the screen, what do you think is his perspective on human learning? Could you please write in the chat box, please? Thank you. Okay, thank you for that response. So Juan said, okay, I'm sorry. So again, based on the shown pictures and words, can you just give me how do you understand these two words, which is similar to what Vilches has explained a while ago? So let's go back to the slide of Vilches. So again, here, so Vilches created this analogy, and according to her, yes, please, Scott. Scott, any question? Did you raise your hand? Okay. So I'm sorry. Jose, I need help.
Yes. Yeah. What do you need?
Yeah. Did you understand my question a while ago?
I actually was in the kitchen just a moment ago. I'm sorry.
Okay. So I am hoping that you can. So,
yeah.
Okay. So I am hoping that they can write inside the chat box like comments about the second. Okay, wait. Okay, this one. So this is another perspective of human learning. So probably I'll just continue.
Maybe, yeah. I think if people just didn't quite comprehend what it is that you're using or were asking, then maybe if you just continue, they'll pick it up in context.
Okay, yes, thank you so much. Okay, so here in this perspective of human learning processes, so similar to what Vilches stated, as you can see here, the boy learns the word for a bird, and he starts to call all animals that fly a bird. Then upon seeing an airplane and from existing schema or what exists in his mind, he calls it a bird. Now that is assimilation. But then his mother tells him that it's not a bird, but an airplane, and it's a non-living thing. That is called accommodation. So accommodation happens when we restructure or modify what we already know. Okay. So yeah, I will just probably go on with the presentation. Someone wrote something on the comment chat box. So I'll just proceed with just explaining and probably not ask you. I'm sorry if I ask you those questions. Okay, let me continue. Okay, so yeah. So basically everything starts with assimilation, and then there's also like another level, which is accommodation, but accommodation only happens if there is a new experience that happened, like learning from the mother what that thing is. or experiencing it by oneself. So this is John Piaget's take on human learning processes. So this one is another perspective of human learning processes, and this is the perspective of interpersonal psychology. So according to Byrne, his transactional analysis, for learning to take place, there should be that kind of transaction. And when you say transaction, it's an exchange of communication. It could be verbal, it could be non-verbal between two people or within himself. Now, some transactions are good, specifically the complementary transaction. And this complementary transaction is seen on the first level, and that is the child-parent transaction. So if you would notice, child is that particular persona, or everyone has a child in himself. When you say child, even if you're already adult, you can be a child. When you are curious, playful, creative, or you're spontaneous. And the parent is the calming and nurturing supportive. So basically, the child parent is happening in the classroom when there is like an increased learner's autonomy. And that can only happen if we first address the need for a child parent transaction to happen. So the next level is adult to adult, which is when we think reasonably, when we are rational. Students can also be like adult, but that kind of transaction can only happen in the classroom if there is this beginning foundation, which is the child and parent. So what does that mean in the classroom? That means that this would require us to certain gradualness, just like in Vilches. Meaning, there should be structure in the class. Structure entails that there is the correct skills development, the task, and the text complexity is according to the level of the students. And then you also have this kind of that's why it's very important in the classroom that we have this sense of repetition. Sense of familiarity in the classroom. That's why we set up class routines. We have repetition in the class, like a review lesson or a recap before we go on with the lesson. And that's why also we consider having games. We also talk to our students like we are just their friends, because that will help us create that child-parent transactions in the class. And then when children feel that they are already familiar with the setup, then you continue to build that on, and then that will lead to an adult-to-adult transaction. That means learning happen in the classroom. Okay, so we go to the next one. This is Chomsky's Psycho-Linguistic Perspective. Just for Chomsky, there are two levels of learning: competence, the actual knowledge of the language, and we are in Japan. That is really very evident. Like everyone is into linguistics and the knowledge of the language, and then, but what is missing usually is the performance, which is the actual use of the language. But of course, we have to have the first level before we gradually move on to the second level, which is the performance. Okay. And then we also have Maslow's organizational behavior. Here, there are also two levels of learning. Like according to Maslow, you have to first help the learners achieve certain needs in the classroom. The need for forming relationships, like being adult role models, or arrange the classroom so that students will experience friendship, peer relationships, class routines. Okay, so if these needs are met, then it will be easier for children to reach the next level, which is their self-esteem needs. This means positive classroom culture. Positive feedback is happening. There's time for reflection. You also allow students to reflect about their learning, and you are encouraging students to take risks. Okay, so again, I'm sure most of you are already doing the following theories that I just reviewed. I'm sure that you can probably thinking, oh, I've been doing that, and I know these are my practices. Especially for most of you who are doing this in here at OTJ. I mean, you've been teaching online, and you are, some of you probably are already doing learning by doing without even thinking about those theories. And so we go to the next part, which is the vertical dimension of the learning cake. This is only like looking at the 5 slices of the language teaching situations. And while you're doing online teaching, and you have also encountered a lot of challenges in the way you teach online, because there are some limitations, I think this could also help us identify some, looking at these 5 slices could also help us identify some challenging aspects in teaching here in Japan. So my question is, looking at these 5 slices, we have 5 components: thinking, empowerment, involvement, doing, and system building. What is the challenging aspect for you as you teach English here in Japan? So probably this time, this will just be a discussion among ourselves, or you can just give your idea. So like, you might not may I ask a question?
Of course.
So so do you understand the question that I just asked?
Generally, I think we understand. I think
Yeah, sorry.
because there's a lot of new information here for a few people, especially maybe people haven't thought about it in terms of 5 slices of a cake in this kind of shape. They might need a little bit of a catalyst to make them think about it that way. But probably by the time people start discussing, other people will start going on. But
Okay. Yeah, I got it.
I think they'll be okay.
Okay, so probably I'll just please just stop me if I'm too fast. I'll just reserve the time later after I discuss these 5 slices, and then we can have the open forum. Okay, so I'll just be very quick in discussing these 5 slices. So basically, in the current situation, this is not just in Japan, but worldwide. This is some of the challenging aspects about teaching. There is a lack of lesson parts integration. There's predominantly low-level thinking. There's predominantly whole classwork, and a lack of learner autonomy. So even in my country, this is a big challenge for us. So let's start with the doing slice. This doing slice is at the center of the cake. So it's just to concretize my point. It is at the center because I believe that teaching, or in this presentation, teaching, learning by doing is at the very core. So what do we mean by learning by doing? So as you can see, for most of you on here at OTJ, I'm sure you already have seen the potential of the use of technology in your teaching, such as Flipgrids, such as podcasts and Moodle and all of those stuff. And you've been using learning by doing unconsciously. And the very point of learning by doing is that you allow learning because you understand that the very principle of learning by doing is that you help students know the process, you help the students know the principle of how to do things, and then you gradually help them achieve something by making use of that technology. So this doing slides, this doing learning by doing has four components. And when we start with with this idea, we always have to start with the task. So what is a task? So definitely it's not practice exercises. What it is that it's a culminating activity. It is lifelike with specific context. So when you say task, it's the anchor, the guidepost, the goal, the lesson's reason for being, the realized potential of the student's communicative ability. So if we are clear about the task, then we can easily identify the three other components. What kind of input should I select? What kind of content focused activity should I plan for my lesson? What kind of language focused activity should I also include in my lesson? So the point is, the task principle is that you begin with the end in mind. You start with the task. What do you want your students to do at the end of your instruction? And that will help you plan with everything. You can minimize. You will not include irrelevant materials. You will only include what your students need. So, like for input, it means like any form of text. It could be prose, non-prose, graphic, etc. And what's the goal of the input? It gives information. It triggers communication or discussion. It generates ideas. It samples a particular aspect of language. So meaning input is not the same as that. So like if you have an essay and reading the essay is not a task. It's just an input. Okay, so we have the next one, which is the content focused activity. If you know the task, you can figure out what should be the content focused activities you will include in that instruction. When you say content focused activity, any exercise that processes, digests information, and packs ideas on a topic of communication. For example, what should you include in your comprehension questions? What kind of worksheets should you include, and etc.
Michelle,
Yes.
we have a question in chat. Shall I read it to you?
Yes, please.
It's from Namiko, and she asks, I believe she popped up the question on the previous slide, and she asks, is this like TBL? Is this like task-based learning?
Yes, it's similar. It's similar to TBL. It could also be similar to project-based learning, as long as you consider the task. Okay, so language focus activity. So these are any exercises that you include so that students understand how language functions. Because you know the tasks, you will think of what kind of language drills should I include? What will be the grammar exercises? So you don't start with a grammar point, because most of the time teachers will be starting with the grammar point. Like there's a level of the way we teach grammar, but actually in this kind of way
Hello.
of teaching,
Keep going, Michelle. It's okay.
okay, in this way of, there is no like we should start with this present tense, the tenses before this. No, you start with the task and then you choose the kind of language or the grammar content or the grammar exercises that you are going to include in your instruction. You don't start with grammar. You just start with the task and then choose what grammar will be helpful for you. So, but somehow for TBL, mostly, sometimes it's not so much on the language focus. Sometimes it's not really that important. What is important is just to communicate meaning. Okay. And then, yeah, you could also decide whether you will include pronunciation exercises at all. Okay. So this is a sample task. Okay. So for example, you are going to ask your students as by groups, they should think that they are a group of young entrepreneurs opening a business company. And from the type of company assigned to them, they should come up with this print ad. They should also choose the type of business from the list below. So you're also giving your students choice, because you have given them the task, but you can give them choice on how to come up with ideas. And then you will be asking them, oh, this is your task. You have to come up with a name and a slogan for your new company. So that is the task. And because of this task, it will be easier for you to direct your instruction. So for example, what will be the immediate preparation for a task? So you can have this as the immediate preparation for a task. And then these are the steps. Like step 1, think about the image for the product. Step 2, think about the visual element in the ad. Step 3, think about the text to go with it. Step 4, design a complete ad with illustration, photograph, caption, and text. So this is the immediate preparation for tasks. But what I was talking about a while ago is this remote remote preparation for tasks. So you will consider how should you plan your lesson. So this is an example. What you can see on the screen is the example of the remote preparation for tasks. So you can probably choose for your main input an essay on techniques in advertising and an essay on the effects of mass media. You can have the comprehension questions and worksheets for the content focus activities. And then secondary input, the actual ad. You can also have the content focus activities, examining actual ads vis-a-vis techniques used. And then you can have the secondary input. Those are the inputs, the content focus activities. Okay, and then language focus. So here, you will only consider these language focus activities because you need them so that your students will be able to do the task. Okay, so let's go now to the thinking. According to Confucius, learning without thought is labor lost. Thought without learning is perilous. Okay, so meaning, yeah, in planning our lessons, we also have to consider that. Oh, why do we include such and such in our instruction? What is our end goal? And then we also consider what kind of thinking do we want from our students? Do we want them to focus just on within the information given to them, or also go beyond the information given? So I'm sure you already know this. That's why whenever you make your exams, you always consider these levels of questioning. You consider that, okay, I should have this level, this amount of knowledge before I could ask higher order level thinking skills to my ask them questions, which would require my students to analyze or synthesize or evaluate or to apply something. So again, we have to lay the foundation so that students can reach that level of potential realizing. or to attain those potentials. So in thinking, after allowing our students to, like, for example, in your classes in the university, asking them to study about Hamlet, or study about, if you're teaching them some science related courses, you create activities such as this. And let's go to the language focus also for system building. So here, what to do with grammar, I've already touched on this discussion a while ago. So basically, at the first level, there is the explanation of form, and we only explain that form or that language because we want students to reach the next level, which is to construct meaning. So this is just from Littlewood, who talked about task-based language teaching, the principles and practice. So he gave this form to meaning continuum. So like he mentioned, he created this continuum showing how do we gradually move from form to meaning. So we start with non-communicative learning. The next stage is pre-communicative practice, and then communicative language practice. So that's in between having exercises and tasks. And then structured communication. And the last one level, which is more really focused on meaning, which is more on TBL games, that's authentic communication. So let me just explain. So this is an example of a task that is focused on meaning. So like, you're going in the mountains, you have to travel light. What will you take? You can take 10 things only. Rank them in order of importance. Be ready to explain your choices and your rankings to others. So that is focused on meaning. But of course, before we allow students to have these activities like authentic tasks, we have to first, like in the learning cake, we have to first build the groundwork, the foundation. So probably we could start with non-communicative learning, focusing on the structures of language, how they are formed, what they mean, through exercises, discovery, and awareness raising activities. Then we can move to, like, for example, this lesson. So this is an example of a non-communicative learning. Like in the examples below, look carefully at the position of the adverbs: always, often, sometimes, usually, and never. What are the rules? Okay, so I'm just giving an example of a non-communicative learning here. So this is the first level, which is really focused on form. And then you will be asking students to do this exercise, which is to apply the rule. And then pre-communicative, which is only to practice language with some attention to meaning, but not communicating new messages. Like, for example, this question and answer. So this is just practicing. Okay, and then here, this is pre-communicative. You can also ask your students, like, with your partner, practice asking and answering questions about what Richard and Fiona have to do and what they would. So you will be explaining to them, no, this will be obligations and these are examples of desires. Okay, and so we move on to the next, communicative language practice, which is practicing language in a context where it communicates new information. That's why we have, like, for communicative exercise or activities, information gap activities, or we try to use personalized questions.
Michelle, I have another question from chat.
Yeah.
Pardon me. Isn't focus on form last for purist TBL instructors?
Of course, I think for based on my understanding, okay, I might be wrong, but I am not saying, did I say it's last? They consider, but the focus is on communicating something. in authentic or real life situations. I mean, they do not focus much more on the structures, what students should use. They allow students to just use what they know, because they will eventually eventually emerge the structures as they go about the activity. Okay.
Oh, I don't know. It wasn't my question.
Sorry.
Okay, but I have another question.
Mhm.
I think it's a follow-up. Are you instructing them on form initially then?
Okay.
Or Kamiko, if you want to open up your microphone, maybe it's better that we hear it directly from you.
I am probably no. I'm sorry if that is what I communicated, but yeah, somehow I communicated in that. This is just I believe the form to meaning continuing when we arrange activities in the class. I think we should lay first the groundwork.
Right,
So
right.
yeah.
I completely agree with that. So my understanding of TVL was that the teacher prepares everything before they enter the classroom. So the
Yeah.
teacher is aware of what language the students are going to learn from the situation. So we give them the situation, or we give them a task, and then they use it, but not consciously.
Yeah, not consciously.
And then that's why at the very end there's language awareness.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So this is an example of a communicative language practice. Now we have structured communication. This is where role play comes in, or simple problem solving, which is using language to communicate in situation which elicit pre-learned language, but with some unpredictability. So it is different from the first one, because here you create like gaps that students will be able to fill in so that they can communicate new messages or new meanings. So this is an example of a structured communication, like holiday plans. In the summer, you and your classmates will have a week's trip to Holiday Island. You meet in order to draw your itinerary and program of activities. You want to include as many activities as possible. When you have agreed on your plans, write them so you can see whether you are likely to meet other groups from the class. The map of Holiday Island shows some things you can do there. Okay, so this is an example of a structured communication. Okay, and this is more on authentic. So this is really creative role play, using language to communicate in situations where the meanings are unpredictable. It requires more complex problem solving and discussion. So like in this example, like the deserted island, or who gets the heart. So these are example, and I'm sure most of you are already aware of these of this kind of authentic communication. Okay, so let's go to involvement. So in the involvement slice, it consists of two levels: world of materials at the first level, and second level is learner's own world. So how do you make learners want to learn? So you can do that. First, you present the world of materials, but you allow the learners to see themselves, or you relate that to the learner's own world. So for example, if you give a writing task, you can give them something like that they can relate to, or you can give them a choice. So like write a short paragraph of an event that's familiar to you. So this student who wrote about a basketball game, he chose this because he's into basketball. And also in involving students, you can also involve them in their own learning when you give feedback. So for example, in this essay, so this is the first essay, so this is the first draft. So of course we understand students are looking at the first draft, it's still it's still just a draft and it needs a lot of help from us. So we provide feedback. So what do we look at in students' composition? We can ask the following. How many main ideas are they saying? Are they saying something substantial? How well have they articulated what they are saying? Abstract, general, concrete, specific? How have they arranged their ideas in a way that makes it easy for the reader to follow? Do their ideas relate together well enough? Is their grammar accurate? Their words apt? Their punctuation coordinated? So helping the students improve his writing. So you can give feedback that allows students to reflect about their writing. So you can say like, oh, your topic sentence suggests that you're going to explain the game as an epic battle for survival, but in fact, the supporting sentences don't amount to this idea. Really? How come? And then also you can like give feedback like, oh, this is a general statement, a statement of truth at any time. How applied to the game? That not clear. And besides, this looks like an ending of the game story. Or you mean couldn't even cut it with a knife? This can easily be another topic sentence. Again, another topic sentence. So I'm giving you a chance to revise this before I grade it. Use the same topic sentence, but show how the game itself in the basketball court was an epic battle for survival. So yeah, in giving specific feedback to students and involving them in their in understanding what should be done in their writing could also contribute to involvement. Okay, and so this is the revised paragraph. So after a series of giving feedback, we can already see the improvement in our students' writing. Because we believe in this principle. So from a Chinese proverb, tell me and I forget, show me and I remember, involve me and I understand. So we have to involve students in everything, even in grading their outputs. Okay, and I'm sure you have been doing this online, like the empowerment. You're empowering your students. Most of the members here at OTJ, because you've been doing a lot of pair and small group works now that you're online. But again, worldwide, so before pandemic, I think more on whole class work. But now there are more ways on how we can allow students to work in pairs and in small group work. But I would say generally there are still a lot of teachers gearing towards a whole class work, and that needs to change. Okay, so learning centered classroom, as I end, is just thinking about these things. There should be variety, problem solving, communication. There's a balance between form and function, coherent whole, because you know the task should be interactive. There's an interchanging teacher-learner roles, personal involvement, cooperative learning, individual work, and of course, surprise. Because if you're using the same thing over and over again to the students, and there's also no surprise. I mean, even if you're doing it online, but it's the same thing, it's not also a surprise. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you so much. My question is just an open forum. I'm sorry.
Okay, round of applause, everyone. And did you have that question again for us, Michelle?
How do you promote learning in the classroom?
How do you promote learning in the classroom? Well, are you talking about our online situation or
Yes.
Okay. I think trying to relate this to what you just said, I don't know if this is just me, but I think a lot of us will probably say that our experiences in the online teaching environment were difficult in the sense that a lot of us were kind of thrown into. And as much as we may have known before about task-based learning or project-based learning, the fact that we suddenly had to do it in a way using software with buttons that we didn't understand hindered a lot of us from being at our best. And if you had some experience prior to doing TBL or PBL in the classroom face-to-face, that might have made it easier for you. But I don't think any of us can probably give a really good assessment of what it was like, at least for the first year, in terms of promoting learning in the classroom using what you may have been referring to. Certainly for me, it was difficult to take what I was already very comfortable with in the face-to-face classroom with verbal classrooms and doing lots of small or just simple pair work and trying to get the students to do that. I certainly wasn't able to achieve my goals that I normally have in a face-to-face classroom, trying to do that online. So in terms of how I do it, I think those are two separate worlds, trying to do it online in the circumstances that we were thrown into, and then whatever success that we can compare that to in the world before the pandemic.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. So.
Anyone else? Feel free, by the way, everyone, to open up your cameras. This is like question answer time. Probably a little easier to approach us as we tell our students, I'd love to see your faces. And then contribute what it is that you would like to do to answer Michelle's question: is how do you promote learning in your classrooms? Anyone at all?
I guess I'm a little bit confused about the cake thing. Why cake?
It's just an analogy,
right,
to concretize the concepts. Because like there is like the first level, gradually moving towards the next level. Yeah, but it's just analogy.
Okay, so the goal is to eat the whole cake, though.
Of course, no.
Okay. It was just sort of for me, that part of the analogy seemed a little bit well, overly delicious and fattening. I don't know. I know. I was wondering, you know, if cake is the best choice. I don't know. The cake thing I found, sorry, it's a little bit of a point of confusion for me. Was, okay, are we supposed to be trying to do all these things, all these elements at the same time, or are we doing one at a different time or something?
Of course, those are component parts, but we are not supposed to do everything. Like, we can only do so much, right, as educators. But I mean, trying to reflect on our teaching on these five slices of the language teaching situations help us, like, make us better educators, I think. But of course, you cannot do all of them. But just a look, overall view of the
so sort of
language teaching situation.
Don't eat the whole cake in one sitting.
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Michelle, if I may ask a question of you. Obviously, you've studied this quite well and thoroughly and have a good theoretical framework at your disposal. And when you came to Japan, what did you find that you had to adjust to before the pandemic and then within the pandemic as you were trying to maintain the directives of your school to stay face-to-face?
Yeah.
Were you able to follow this framework, or what parts did you have to sort of abandon or shave away?
This framework actually helped me a lot because I've been doing this for many years in the Philippines. And I've been also, of course, my school, their first language, my students are like, most of our students in that school are, you know, rich students. So they use English at home. But aside from that, I've also been like volunteering in a public school, like teaching for them. And these students really do not have access to English and they do not speak English at home.
I'm sorry, we're talking about the Philippines right now?
Yes.
Okay.
So before coming to Japan, I've already experienced that challenge because my students are not speaking English at home, and they have limited resources, and they have limited knowledge of the language. So they do not enjoy the same resources that my students in a private school actually enjoy. So I have to follow this kind of this cake, learning cake, delicious cake, because I have to cater to these students. And that helped me in my teaching here in Japan, because I've learned already a lot of scaffolding strategies in the Philippines with that volunteer work in the public school. So I already know what to do with students with limited English. So it's not really a difficult, shift from what I do in the Philippines to what I am doing here now in Japan. But because I was assigned in a school with a English course, of course, I cannot say immediately, oh, I'm already like doing the right thing. But when I was assigned again to another school, which is like focused on science, it was not easy. It was not difficult for me again um to teach there, because again I just have to follow, just to lay the groundwork. Lay the foundation so that I will help my students develop their potentials. So I've been doing that also in another school now, and so far so good, I think.
I'd actually like to follow up on that. What if you can give specific sort of examples about what you found different? I've always myself having been born in the Philippines and not really knowing that much detail about it, except that I know that the Philippines is very good at speaking English. But in terms of your experience of working in the poorer public school and then coming to Japan, how do you compare your students? How do you compare the teaching styles, the teaching curriculums, the teaching environment? You said that you were ready to take on the challenge in Japan, but what specifically did you find common or uncommon between the two environments?
Okay, so what is common is that the level of English is common between those students in the public school and the level of English here. So that is how low level that public school where I volunteer at, the kind of English that they have, it's really low level, because they were just like they were given scholarship, but they were really, really very poor for them to get the scholarship.
But
It's
that's
not
not
because they are intelligent, definitely not. But these students really did not have enough resources to study formally. So basically, English is a foreign language to them. So that's the common thing. What is uncommon is that those students in the Philippines do not have all the resources that are now that I am enjoying here in Japan. I have, as a teacher, have all the resources that I can use, and my students here have all the resources that they can use so that I can help them. So all I need to do is to be creative and use what I learned and help them with that. But in the Philippines, I have to create everything from zero. I have to use my own money to help those students. So that's the uncommon thing about the two.
Those students that you were teaching in the public schools in the Philippines, maybe I just can't get my head around this, but I always thought that from at least moderate levels of income and households that are not in poverty, that from there, that generally English is actually fairly well spoken.
No, that's not true.
So my question is, and I would like to be enlightened about it because I actually don't know the number. How good are Philippine schools in terms of actually producing good speakers of English? Maybe we as foreigners who go to the Philippines, go to the hotels in Manila and encounter only the really good English speakers in the Philippines.
Because you encountered only the educated ones.
Right. Okay. So in general, among the Filipino populace, what is the saturation level of true English communicative ability, if you can pin down a number How good is the Philippines actually in terms of speaking?
It's been deteriorating because the quality of education is deteriorating because the resources given by the government is really not enough. So like, yeah, in the past, we probably enjoy the English proficiency that we have. I mean, people thought that we have that English proficiency, that the level. But if you really go to the Philippines and see what's really happening there, you will be surprised. Yeah, because like, I mean, these children, they they will not think of English. They will think of what food they will eat every day. So how could they even think of learning a language then if they cannot even like have a food on their table?
Understood. We have just a couple of minutes. Anybody else with a question for Michelle? Or Michelle, do you have a question for anybody else?
No,
Okay.
I think my time is up.
Pretty much. So why don't we open up our microphones again? Final round of applause.
Good job.
And Michelle, thank you very much. I think that was the very first time people have seen you in OTJ. So good job. Well done.
Thank
And,
you for the opportunity.
No, not at all.
Just
Thank you
tried
very
it.
much. Yeah.
Okay.
And everyone, thank you. The final presentation of the night before we go to SS21 TV with me and Adam talking yet again with each other is with Liz Bigler, and she's up at 8 o'clock. So I'm gonna head off and get that started. Michelle, thank you again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye everybody.
Bye.